Sometimes I would be a shell of a person. I just would start sobbing. It felt like I was grieving. I was letting a past version of myself show up and be fully known. And me
Yeah.
as present day Leslie was hugging her saying, "You can be here." 2021, that's when I realized, as part of this implosion, I didn't know that I had been being psychologically abused since the sexual abuse stopped
Mm.
when I was a kid. And so that has just messed with my mind and my understanding of my identity so much. So when we talk about false narratives, whew, those are personal.
Welcome to an Inspirational People episode on the Share Life podcast. I'm Jason Scott Montoya, and today I'm speaking with my friend, Leslie Haynes. Leslie, say hello.
Hi, everyone. Great to be here.
Yes, thank you for joining us and sharing your life with us. Leslie and I know each other because we went on a Global X mission trip to Honduras a few years ago. Leslie is a systems thinker, a storyteller who helps people uncover their true identity and builds lives that align with it. As the systems and process manager at TrueFace, she creates frameworks that foster growth, authenticity, and connection. With a background in digital environments and community formation at North Point Ministries, Leslie blends strategy with a deep passion for grace-filled transformation at work and everyday life. Leslie has quite a story, and we're going to dive in, tease it out. So, Leslie, pick a spot in your story, and let's go from there.
I'll start with this. My life, so I'm 37 years old, and my early life was marked by profound trauma, and I tried to ignore it for a really long time. And I'm in a season where I am embracing that, and I'm embracing who I was, who I am now, what I've been through, and I am loving myself through it instead of just acting like it didn't happen. I now have the diagnosis of complex PTSD, and I have just been on this journey trying to figure out what is that, because it's not really widely talked about and it's super rare. And how do I live with that each day, which some days are easier than others. Because I've never been safer than I am now, but it's because I'm safe that a lot of these things come up now. So yeah, I'm on a journey.
Yeah, so let's tee that a few pieces there. So you talked about embracing it. Why are we resisting the thing that you were resisting, but that you're now embracing? Why do we resist it? What's going on there underneath?
Honestly, for me, it was a lot of training from early on. So I think about my life as I was trained from an early age to think a certain way, show up a certain way, walk into a room a certain way, respond to others a certain way, feel or not feel a certain way. And so over time, that kind of created a facade that didn't really feel like me. And so I started to feel this dissonance in me that um, who I was not really who I was showing to the world. And there was so much more behind the scenes than what I was showing to the world, almost like an iceberg. Like people could see the little
Yeah.
top of it, but really there was so much more underneath. And I started to find that over time, when I allowed myself to come out of the shadows slowly but surely and started to process my trauma in safe environments, um, I started to see that that was celebrated when I was always told that that would not be celebrated, that that vulnerability, who I am naturally, and what I bring to the table, I was always kind of given this narrative that that wasn't going to be celebrated. And what I'm finding is that it's the opposite, that I can show up and be fully known, and that is creating deeper relationships, because you can only be loved to the degree that you're known. And if I'm showing up into a relationship where I'm only showing you part of me, then I can only imagine that you could only love that part of me. You can't fully love me. And so I just started saying, you know what? I'm just going to show people all of me, and the right people will choose to stay in my life or opt out. And I just started to live my life like that. And over time, I have created a safe circle where I can come out of those shadows and be fully known with whatever it is that I'm dealing with.
Yeah, so there's a couple layers there that I think are worth focusing on. One is you wanted to be known, but you were afraid of being known with the people around you. And so you had experience being around people that would essentially pull that out of you and provide that safe context and get to the point where you were willing to just accept the consequences of being who you were, being sincere. What is going on there in terms of like your community is, I guess we could say it's got some, at least some toxic elements. Why would you want to stay in that? Why is it better to keep it the secret and stay in that? Is it because it's better than nothing?
A lot of times we believe that it's um, any connection is better than no connection. Um, And while that's true, that you shouldn't be alone and isolate, if you're connected to people who continuously hurt you, you can't actually let yourself heal. It's like imagine a wound that you just keep ripping open. It's never going to scab, and it's never going to heal underneath all the way through. And so, um, what I have found over time is that what is broken in relationships has to be restored in relationships. So, um, you have to have relationships in order to grow and to mature and to be loved. But those relationships may not be from your family of origin. Those relationships, based on how those people were trained in their family of origin, um, and and how they were trained, in your original family, like you can't change something overnight. It takes time. And so you have to train that out of you. And so you have to look at other relationships and learn from other relationships. So, one, you can put language around the relationship that you had because everything seems normal until you have something to compare it
Mm.
to. And once you
Yeah.
compare it to something, now you can look at it and say, oh no, that is not what I had. So something that's been super healing, um, but super informational for me is watching my adult friends parent their children or the way that they talk about their children. That's not what I had. So seeing it allows me to be able to compare it with what I had. And then it allows me to say, oh, maybe it really was as bad as my nervous system internalized. Maybe it
Mm.
was as bad as the survival mode that I put on and wore for 20 years. There's a reason I showed up like that. So, hearing from others and learning from others and being in relationship with people who can show me a healthier version of what I had, um, allows me to be able to start trusting that the healthier version could come out of me.
Yeah. Yeah. So help us understand when you say you have this complex PTSD, what are the types of things that trigger that and what was it for you that fostered that in you
Yeah,
in your own story?
yeah. So, let me start off with this. So, PTSD is a term that is thrown around a lot nowadays. So let me be clear about what it is. PTSD happens when a traumatic event happens. We all have those. Everyone goes through traumatic events. But what happens with some people is that once you go through that traumatic event, it gets stored in your nervous system as trauma. And once that gets stored, it kind of gets stuck in there. It's like a repeating process, it just gets stuck. And so if someone has um, a safe, normal childhood, they could develop PTSD as an adult, and eventually you can learn new techniques and you can kind of come out of PTSD because it's normally based on one traumatic event that gets stored in your body as trauma when it goes unprocessed. For
Mhm.
me, for complex PTSD, when you hear that complex in front of it, it really is, because it is so much more complex. It is, I had multiple forms of trauma have happen while I was growing up multiple times. So I had sexual abuse in my family of origin. I was abandoned by my mother at 3 and then by my father at 17. And I also grew up in chaos and was being shipped back and forth across the country to my biological mother's house, and how that stored in my body as a young person trying to process that, it's stored as trauma. And I learned from a very early age that I needed to be stuck in survival mode: fight, flight, freeze, and fawn. I just lived in those states for 37
Yeah.
years until I really started to realize how dissociated I was constantly. I wasn't showing up in any room fully as me. And I had suppressed feelings. I had stopped listening to my body for years. I was 200 pounds and no idea what my body was trying to tell me because I had quieted it for so long. So that complex PTSD, it happened because all of those traumas got stored in my nervous system while my brain was forming. So it is so much more ingrained in who I am and how I show up in a room. And so what that's looked like in the last couple of years as that has come out is, at 31 years old, I was bedridden and could not move. I had pain all over my body, and I couldn't brush my teeth. I couldn't. My husband would sit dinner on my chest, and I would just scoop it into my mouth at 31 years old. Um, and all of it was tied to trauma that was wrapped up in who was in my life at the time. Because while I had forgiven the people who had hurt me, that didn't make them safe. And so, as I continued to have a relationship with those people, my body was screaming at me and telling me, it's not safe, get out. And I was in turn telling my body, no, no, shut up. We're doing things. We've got stuff to do, and we have to love our family. Um, And so the symptoms got worse and worse and worse. And Jason, you saw that firsthand. Unfortunately, your kids saw that firsthand. When we were in Honduras on our mission trip, I had an episode where I had a panic attack that then moved into an episode of full body paralysis from my neck down. And I was paralyzed for almost 2 hours. Episodes like this have now happened about um, 13 times, where I've been fully paralyzed from the neck down. But the one in Honduras was especially traumatic because, one, I wasn't around anybody, and that, like, I was around all people that I was supposed to be leading, and and they were showing up for me in such a
Mm.
beautiful way. But I didn't even have the safest person in my life, which is my husband, there. And so I'm paralyzed and I can't swat these bugs off of me. So I just had bugs crawling all over me for 2 hours, which I still have issues with bugs. And it is hard for me um, to kill a bug, which before that trip I had no problem. But when they crawl all over you for 2 hours and you can't move, that is what it is. So,
Yeah,
so I have
that's how they
had,
make horror movies.
yes, this is what they make horror movies out of. This is what some of my dreams are made out of these days, Jason. Um, so that is, sometimes it just shows up in wild ways where my body will shut down in an instant and I will be completely paralyzed. And I have just learned to
And
roll
how old
with
were
it.
you the first time it happened?
I was 36 the first time it happened.
Okay.
And last year, as an example of how this shows up, so leading up to my middle sister got married last October,
Mhm.
and it was such a beautiful time, and we had amazing family come into town and all of that, and my sister's wife is amazing, and I'm so excited that she's in our family. But leading up to that, I was around family a lot, and there was a lot of extra stress on my nervous system. And
Mhm.
so, what that looked like practically is that present Leslie would show up in a conversation and be able to be present with you and be fully me. But then behind the scenes, I had to give space for past Leslie to come out.
Mhm.
And so,
Yeah.
what that looked like is between July, um, July last year to October of last year, leading up to my sister's wedding, I had 10 episodes of full body paralysis from my neck all the way down, where I just had to give my mind and body and my emotions space to breathe. I literally, I would shut down completely. Sometimes I would be a shell of a person. I just would start sobbing, but it felt like I was grieving, like I was letting
Mhm.
a past version of myself show up and be fully known. And me
Yeah.
as present day Leslie was hugging her saying, "You can be here. You can take up space in this room."
Yeah. Yeah. So it was almost, I would guess like something triggered it, but a part of that pocket, that trauma pocket, was now coming out, and you didn't have any
Yeah,
control. You had to just let it
yeah.
happen,
And sometimes it
right?
was triggered. It really was just triggered. So think about triggers as it's just the straw that broke the camel's back. It's not
Mhm.
necessarily that it's tied to that one thing. So for me, oftentimes in this season, my um, my episodes are triggered by a loud noise. So something that would make someone with a normal nervous system just flinch, my nervous system does not have margin for that. And so I can't flinch. So I just shut down and just sit there
Yeah.
for, 45 minutes while my body comes back online.
Yeah. Well, would you say this is a accurate description? Like I've had experiences where, um, like past me would face something, and then I was unable to overcome it, and there was some kind of a challenge or a trauma, and then that kind of got buried, and then years later, I I actually faced and overcame that, and then it was like it reconnected that old thing into that
Yes.
moment. Is that
Yes,
okay?
100%. It's like it's like you learn it in the left side of your brain, which is where you store all like the facts and figures of like,
Mhm.
you know, this is how it is and um but
Mhm.
when you experience it, it moves to the right side of your brain and it gets stored in the relational side of your brain.
Mhm.
Or if you experience it or if you see someone else experience it. There's been some recent studies that have come out that show that um I think it's done in rats, but I mean it's the same in humans. If I see something good in your life, it has the same positive effect on me as if that same good thing happened in my life. So it's
Mhm.
almost like I can watch all these amazing things happen to you and it's like I experience them too. So they're moving to my right side of the brain that I can believe that these
Mhm.
good things are possible because someone else has experienced them. And once you can
Mhm.
start to imagine that, you can allow yourself to really believe it. And and it's
Yeah.
not just that you understand that it's possible, it's that you believe that it's possible and trust that it is possible.
And does that also play out with books and movies and TV shows, or is it just real life
Yeah,
stories?
absolutely. I think that um, so much of I gravitate towards real stories and documentaries and stuff like that because part of that is, I think, just my own story. Like someone who grew up in survival mode, I need to build my understanding of the world based on facts and figures, not based on a dream world,
Hmm.
because the dream world is not the one
Yeah,
that I'm trying to survive. And so I'm just
yeah.
now coming into new levels of consciousness as I create safety for myself today.
Yeah,
I'm coming into new levels of consciousness where I'm able to dream and create in a way that I've never been able to before. So I've always
yeah,
gravitated towards like real stories and memoirs and things like that, especially in these last few years, because memoirs have allowed me to put words around things that I thought or experienced or felt in a room, but couldn't put words to. And
yeah.
but also fiction stories allow me to dream in a way that I never would allow myself to dream because
Mhm.
I had to show up in the real world.
Yeah,
Um, and
yeah.
so both really work in tandem and allow me to
Hmm.
exist in a world that I absolutely have to survive in, but then allows
Yeah,
me to dream about what might be possible one day and allow me to think
yeah.
outside the
And
box.
yeah, I think it might be hard for people to understand. Like I'll use a visual to help, but when you're drowning in a riptide and sharks are chewing on your arms and legs, it's like hard to think about like strolling on the beach, right?
100%. Yeah. I'm a little focused on the shark teeth.
So help us. So I think maybe to help us like connect that dot, like people might say, well, Leslie, this how is it that that you are drowning? Like what's going on in your days? You've kind of told us some milestones. So like from 17 to 31, like what was life like? What was going on that you felt like you were in that survival?
Yeah, I didn't even know I was in survival mode because that's all I knew. So
Okay.
it really was,
Yeah.
I mean, I thought I was thriving. Oh,
Okay.
past Leslie had no idea because I was thriving based on where I had been, but thriving based on where
Mm.
you had been doesn't mean that you're thriving.
uh,
It's like,
so a little bit better is better,
but
but
it's
it's not like how it should
exactly,
be.
it's like,
Yeah. Yeah.
we say this in our family, just because this is the healthiest relationship you've ever had doesn't make this a healthy relationship. We say that a lot in our family.
Yeah.
And so um, it's kind of like that. Like it's in comparison. So my life looked
Mhm.
steady and stable. I was building a life with my husband, and like all these things were falling into place. But at the same time, um,
At what age did you get married?
28, yeah,
Okay.
uh, 27, doesn't matter.
Mhm. And did the from from 17 to when you got married, was there more traumatic experiences in that period, or had all of it come before that?
There were some traumatic experiences that happened in that period, um, but really, I had started to build the life that I want. And
Mhm.
so I started going after, I kind of recognized that I'm going to take me into whatever relationships I go into in the future. So I better make sure I like me. And so I started
Mm.
dating me. And I would take a book with me wherever I go. And I just started, I would go out to eat by myself. I just started dreaming about what would a life look like if I had to live this whole life alone. What would I want that life to look like? And I just started building that life. And
Yeah.
and part of that was in that season, I I mean, I probably will always have abandonment issues because I was left by my mom and my father at 17. And so um but I started to flip the narrative. Not everybody's eventually going to leave me, um, but more I don't want to hide parts of me waiting for someone to find that out about me and then leave. I want to show up
Mm.
fully known and people can opt in or opt out. And so I started building this safe environment where I could come and bring all of me. And
And what age were you at that point?
I was fresh out of college, probably in college
Yeah.
actually, so early 20s.
Okay.
Um, but it
Yeah.
still would be another 10, 12 years before I fully came out of the shadows, because even though I was showing up fully me, um, I still was carrying secrets for my family, stuff that I would take to the grave. But those secrets wouldn't come out until 2021, when they all kind of resurfaced in the family. And there was a big implosion. Um, but it wasn't me that brought all that out. And so,
Yeah. But what do they say? Don't shoot the messenger. You were the messenger, right? In that
no,
sense.
no,
No, no. Oh,
no,
okay.
it
Yeah.
it resurfaced. It came out from someone else. And so,
Okay.
um, so I was being asked, did this happen? And could just confirm it.
Mm,
And I
and
didn't
you
have
verified it. Yeah.
I didn't have to tell my story over and over
Yeah.
again.
That moment of verifying it, like, did you feel a sense of burden being removed?
I did. Um, but at the same time, while it wasn't being denied anymore that it happened, it also wasn't being owned either. Um,
No one was taking
yeah.
responsibility or being accountable. Yeah.
And in 2021, that's when I realized, as part of this implosion, I didn't know that I had been being psychologically abused since the sexual abuse stopped
Mm.
when I was a kid. And so that has just messed with my mind and my understanding of my identity so much. So when we talk about false narratives, whew, those are personal.
I mean, people use the word gaslighting. Is that what you're thinking of, or is this
Yes.
different?
There was gaslighting. There was painting me as a liar in every circle, but I didn't know that I was being painted as a liar.
Mm. So your reputation was being just trashed by all these people, which was humiliating, embarrassing.
Yes. But also in private, I was being told that didn't happen. Where as an adult, I can say all of my symptoms point to it for sure happened. And it for sure got lodged in my nervous system. So I can see that as an adult, I can see the facts and figures that prove it. So it allows me, as Leslie, who was psychologically abused and wasn't allowed to believe it, I can now believe it.
Fundamentally, what's one of the layers that's going on is there's a power struggle, right? It's using power in this case to manipulate you and make you believe certain things for whatever purpose that they had, and you having to push back, but coming from a position of woundedness and brokenness and isolation. Like how is someone supposed to fight that kind of power?
You don't fight it, you have to remove yourself from it, because this is also part of it. My abuser is the one person in my family who loved me the most and was the kindest to me. So, but that didn't make her safe. And you have to get out of that situation in order to start healing. Because, like I said, I was still in that situation because I had forgiven the person. And I know that it's only because people abuse because they've been abused. And so I know that these things that she did to me happened from a place of her being hurt, but that doesn't make it not hurt me. So if you're in that situation, flee, get out, find someone else for safety. because you will never be able to find safety with that person.
Yeah. In most cases of abuse, you have enabling of people around them or systems in place that make it possible. Is there anything you'd speak into that as it relates to your situation? Was that relevant?
Yeah, I'd say,
I think a lot of times, maybe just to also like, a lot of times we think, well, I didn't do the abuse, so I'm okay. But we might actually be enabling an abuser and either know it and don't want to confront it, or maybe
mhm.
don't even know it.
I'd say that the abuse is the symptom. So pay attention to the symptoms that come out of people because there's something deeper underneath because that person just needs to be loved. And the people who say that they're not the abuser, but they watch it happen and don't do anything. If you're not paying attention, it they're not culpable, but they are. But also sometimes it really is just really hidden. So stop letting people hide in plain sight. The enablers and the abusers and the victims. Just stop hiding in plain sight.
I think one of the dynamics as the abused person, you face the wrath of that person and that and like that power struggle. And I think people are afraid of standing up to that power and facing that wrath. You know, you mentioned the reputation, your reputation. Like if you go against this person, you know they're going to tarnish you in every possible way, right? I had an experience with a toxic mentor when I moved to Atlanta in 2005, and when it ended, that's exactly what he did. He essentially started contacting everyone we both knew, and then he would BCC me so I could see every single person he was sending this message to, and then he would essentially talk about all these things about me and how horrible I was, and it was rough. I don't know if that would have shaped it, but I got to the point where it didn't really matter. When you face dark powers, it's there are consequences.
There are, but there's consequences to staying silent too. So it's like this.
Yeah,
It's hard to stay silent. It's hard to speak up. Choose your hard.
yeah, I like
It's
that. That's good.
it's hard to keep going with the status quo, and it's hard to make change happen. But choose your hard. Which one has the bigger
Mm,
impact? Which one will allow you to be more free? Choose that hard.
yeah, and one that you don't have regrets, one that's freeing for you and other people, one that's taking responsibility, being accountable. Like it only gets harder as time goes on, right?
Some days are hard, some days are easy. It's just right now I'm in a season where I have more easy days than hard, but there have also been seasons where I can't get out of bed. So
Yeah. You've had this traumatic child experience. You get through your 20s, you're trying to reshape your life. You end up getting married. A couple late years into that, you are bedridden. Talk about your husband and his role in this and how that played out for you.
I this has been something I've been processing a lot lately. And my husband Alan has been such a safe place for me to show up and bring all of me. Um, but it has taken a long time to bring those layers. It has been an onion over
Mm,
years. Um, and I am so grateful that I'm in a relationship where we have grown together and he has accepted each version of me because I know that that's not
mhm.
necessarily
There's no
promised or
guarantees.
guaranteed.
Yeah.
So I am so grateful for that. Um, and I have just been becoming more me as as it goes on. So I think about it like a big block of marble. And over time, like there was like, a shell of who I was.
Yeah.
But even as I got married and Alan started to heal some of my childhood wounds just by being there and showing up for me consistently, um, as he starts to heal some of those childhood wounds, I'm able to kind of take pieces off of that sculpture and say, oh, that was never me. I can stop carrying that. Oh, that wasn't me. I'll let that go. Or that served me for a
Yeah.
season, but that doesn't work anymore. And so slowly but surely, this sculpture of who I really am is emerging. Um, and Alan has just been so great to just love me through that and show up consistently for me, um, and continue to assure me that he is going to show up for me, because that's a fear that I have, is that one day he'll
Yeah.
leave like everybody else did. Um,
Mhm.
and if that happens, I'll be fine because I was built for that, you know? And he and I joke about that a lot too, um, because I was trained for being fine.
Vibe. Have you ever seen the movie
No,
Gravity or
uh,
or The Revenant? Oh, okay, there are stories of like this person that just it's survival, like after one thing after the next, and they survive to the end of the
that's
movie. You know.
me. That's me. I am the revenant. So Alan has just been a place where I have been able to bring whatever version I am willing to show him, he has accepted with full grace. And that has made all the difference.
Yeah.
And he has not looked away. And in these seasons
Yeah.
that I've been in, where I am having these deep episodes of, these PTSD episodes where I'm paralyzed for, an hour and a half or whatever, and Alan is cleaning up my snot as it runs down my face. um, and it's not
Yeah.
pretty, but he is there, and he is not looking away, and he is not flinching, and that has made all of the difference.
There's something really important there that I think is worth emphasizing, which is to be human is to be dependent. And in your situation, when you have these moments of paralysis, like that is what it means to be human, is to be completely helpless and dependent. And ultimately in God, we don't exist, nor do we in terms of our death, all of it. We have no control. So we're dependent on something beyond us. And I think that terrifies us, but it's the most human part of
It
us.
terrifies me for sure, because relationships, like, complex PTSD is a relational trauma, like, it's relational traumas that have shaped me. And
Mm,
so relationships don't feel safe, but I've learned over time that some relationships can be safe. And so it's taken time to train that back into my system. Um, and my natural state is still to not lean on anyone. Um, but I also know that, to your point, Jason, our God is a triune God. He is not just, he doesn't just have relationships, he is relationships. And we are made in that image. So if we are made in the image of God, who is a triune God who could be nothing but relationship, then we are bound to relationships. And we're shown that from when we are infants, and we are bound to a caregiver. And our nervous systems feed off of that caregiver, and you learn how to regulate yourself based off of someone else's nervous system. That's how you learn to survive in the world. Not how I learned to survive, but um, that's how most people learn to survive and
yeah.
regulate themselves, is by looking at someone outside themselves. And so it's exactly to your point. We are relationships. You cannot run from it. You could be hurt by it, and probably will be hurt by it in this world. But there are great people in this world too. And those are the ones that you should gravitate towards and allow them to heal your other relational wounds. Don't continue to look to the same people who hurt you to also be the ones to heal you.
Yeah. So your husband has this transformative impact in your life, and then here a couple years ago you start having these episodes, but you also jump into this program that also plays a role in your healing. So talk about the last few years and how that has played out to today.
Yeah. So, started this mentoring program back up about 10 years ago. And slowly but surely, it helped me to identify the lies that I had believed in my life and start replacing those with truth. And this is something that there were so many lies that I believed. And so it has taken me almost a decade.
Like, what would be a few specific examples
Here
that
is
you could throw at
my
us?
this is one I internalized, and it was like I remember doing 3 stars next to it because I was like, oh my God, that, yes, I am worthless. I must perform to be accepted. I must be heard to be of value. These were some of the lies that I believed. None of these things are true. I am worth dying for. That is what Jesus has shown me and taught us. God loves me. He chose me for things that are just specific for me. So these things are not true, but there are things that I believed that I didn't necessarily, I wasn't able to pinpoint the lies right away, but I started to notice the behaviors and emotions that oozed out of me. And I was like, ooh, where'd that come from? Like, ooh, that was an over exaggeration. Why did that happen? And so I started to be curious, not judgmental. Ted Lasso quote is be curious, not judgmental. But I started to be curious. What is that in me? And where did that come from? Where did that lie get lodged? What year did I start believing that? What happened to me that made me, start to believe that? And how can I undo some of those and start to believe things that are actually true? Because over time, you can take what you think about and replace it with new things. And that trains you over time to just show up differently. And so that is what I have done over and over and over again. And once I got through that mentoring program, I immediately signed up to mentor others because one, I just have a passion for mentoring um and walking alongside others. But then also I knew that selfishly it would make me retrain myself over and over and over again. And I could just continuously replace these lies because these lies are so ingrained in who I am and how I show up that it has taken a long time to start to show up differently.
Yeah, and I'll give an example of how the lie is actually used to trap us. So when I mentioned the toxic mentor, the performance was one that I struggle with in that dynamic. So dynamics are a really big piece of the puzzle because how we respond to certain things, it's a program, right? And so I would try and perform for this person, and then he would tear me down. As a performer, then I would like, well, now I got to try even harder. So now I'm trying to do what I did, but like level up. And then I just kept playing that game, and the tower would just keep falling. But it created this dynamic that he could then just continue to exploit me because I would just continue to play out that role. And so changing the narrative, changing the belief changes the dynamic and creates a new dynamic that prevents us from being trapped. Would you say that's a
Yeah,
helpful explanation?
definitely.
Yeah. So if someone, as we've gone through your story here, is there any other part of it that we haven't highlighted or dove into that you think is worth mentioning, or have we
Yeah,
covered it?
there's one piece that is just I it people are drawn to it. In the last year and a half, I have lost 75 pounds without Ozempic or any other medication and without restricting my diet or anything like that. And part of it is learning to listen to my body. But the main two other things are I added fiber into my diet because I learned that most Americans aren't getting enough fiber, and I for sure wasn't. So I added fiber. And then I also added a powder called athletic greens, which allows me to get vegetables every day. So I'm like microdosing a whole bunch of vegetables every day. So I'm less stressed about adding that into my diet and everything. And once I started those two things, literally all the weight just fell off. And it was like, I,
Oh,
yeah,
wow.
it has been wild.
So how do you make sense of that?
I think that I had been, um, my body had been storing fat for years. And part of that was a little bit because I was eating too much because I wasn't getting enough fiber. But that's the only piece that doctors would tell me is that I needed to stop eating as much. I needed to, that's all the world would tell you is you need to restrict yourself. But what the problem was is that my body was storing fat because it wasn't getting nutrients. So it's storing fat, telling me you're starving me. So we're just going to store up fat because you're not giving me the things I need. And so it stores up fat. And then the second I started giving it nutrients, it was like, this fat anymore? What? And it just fell off. And because it just was I wasn't getting very many nutrients as I was eating, um, because I was eating a normal American diet, which was like, fries several times a week and all of that. And then a new thing that I started doing is adding more protein. So, especially now that I've dropped all this weight, what my body is looking for is my body wants to know that it's safe and I'm going to sustain it. And so now it's looking for protein and it's like
Mm,
it's holding on to like the little bit of fat left because um it's like no, we've lost so much. Are you sure we're not starving? And so once I give it enough protein each day, it's like, oh no, we have enough food. We're good. We can drop this weight. And then it just goes right off. And so it has been a wild year
yeah.
and a half of just learning that, listening to my microbiome. I've done like a lot of research. Like I love learning, so I just enjoyed learning about like the microbiome, and I was learning so much about neuroscience as I learned about complex PTSD that it all kind of like went together. And then I was also working in data consulting, doing data science type stuff. So all of and data science is based on neuroscience. So it all kind of like fed together and just like made this
Yeah.
cute little nerd bank for me to just play around in. So
Okay. Yeah.
so I've learned so much.
So you've had a mental and a
I
physical
really have.
transformation.
Yeah. And I
Wow.
mean,
Yeah.
I'm off of all my pain medications. I'm off like I was on nerve pain medications for like 6 years and I'm off of that. I've even through
Wow.
the latest healing with some of my psychological stuff. I just recently weaned myself off of one of my anxiety medications. And so I'm like sleeping by myself without medication too. So it's like I'm coming into new levels of
Wow.
being able to show up and regulate myself and feel things in real time and not just store that feeling down for I don't know forever and not process it.
Yeah.
So I'm like I'm letting grief come as it comes and if something big happens during the day I'm letting myself pause and actually feel it. And so it's slow work of just um, consistently showing up for myself.
Yeah. So you grew up, you learned how to survive, and now you're learning how to thrive. So what does it mean to live better? Like, what does it mean
Yeah.
now?
So for me, living better is really I want people to live out of who they are, not who I am. So I I want to help people learn, like identify their values, help people identify their wiring and their passions, and start to build a life that aligns with that so that you're not showing up as the world taught you to show up or as your family of origin taught you to show up, but you're showing up out of the whisper in your heart that really comes from your creator that says, this is who you are and it is perfect.
Yeah. How has all of this affected your work life and this in the just your career over the years? What kind of role has it played, and what has it taught you about that
Yeah.
dynamic?
So I gravitate towards systems in work because I love to tinker. And so over time, I worked at North Point Ministries, which is a large Atlanta area church conglomeration. And I worked on the nonprofit side, working in their systems and working in adult ministries, kind of doing small groups and getting people into groups and stuff like that. And so groups and relationships has been such a central point for my healing and my being able to come out of the shadows and share things in small doses. And so for me, that is so ingrained into everything I do. So as
Mm.
I finished my season at North Point Ministries and was dreaming about what was next for me, um, I started doing some work with True Face, and I just was really drawn to the way that they approach faith and the way that they just want people to be fully known. And it was all the things that were
Yeah.
themes in my own life that allowed me to see True Face and be like, that's the thing I've been looking for. And once I saw it, I was like,
Mm.
let's go. And so they brought me on,
Yeah.
and I've been working for True Face for about a year now. And we just exist to help people come fully alive in who they are created to be. We exist in the identity space and small group space, which is uh, what I was trained in for so long. And so it really is such a great fit for me, and my skill set really aligned with what they needed at the time, which was more of the systems and the back end stuff.
Yeah. So there are a lot of toxic work environments and toxic bosses, but at least those two you had pretty healthy environments. Is that how it have you had has that been a steady reliable thing through your life, or is that just more of a recent thing?
That's more of a recent thing. I have had some not so great bosses. I worked in the restaurant industry for 9 years, and so I had all kinds of bosses.
Mm.
I was cussed at, I was kicked out, I was like all kinds of things. Um, but but I have consistently looked for um mentors in my life. So that has been a consistent thing for me, is that I don't necessarily always look up to bosses and stuff, but I gravitate towards people around me that have the thing that I want. It's someone that, you know, is showing up in relationships the way that I want to show up in relationships. So I'm like, I want to learn from that person. Let me spend time with them. And so my bosses have not always been the greatest before I started in ministry. And I mean, we're all human. So even in ministry, we show up as
Yeah.
humans because that's what we do. It's so there are, good days and
Yeah.
bad days, but for the most part, I have had incredible bosses that have allowed me to continue to heal and show up um, when I have a day where I can't function, that's okay. So just giving me space to
Mhm.
just be who I am.
Yeah. Yeah, that's neat. I mean, speaking of bosses, like how has mentoring played a role in your
Yeah,
story?
I have consistently looked to mentors to to learn from, like I said before, like looking to people to be like, how did they parent? Ooh, that's different than how I was parented, or like things like that, to just give me a healthy contrast to what I had, and that has helped to give me language. Um, and then once I have language for that kind of stuff, then I can actually let myself feel the
Mm.
weight of it. Like once I have language that, okay, it was as bad as I think, then now I can feel that, ooh, I can actually
Yeah.
feel the weight of that leaving. And so mentors have been such a great space for me to process those things and for me to I often look to those people to model what these things look like in my life,
Mm,
if they can. So
yeah.
right as I was starting to dive into complex PTSD, I read a memoir called What My Bones Know, and I allowed the author Stephanie Fu to model what it looks like for me to show up and hold my complex PTSD with open hands and say, okay, how has this affected me? So I look to people like that, I may never meet Stephanie Fu, but she models that for
Yeah.
me. So she mentors me regardless of if I ever meet her. So I allow myself to be
Yeah.
shaped by those people around me that I choose. Like I'm more intentional about being
Yeah.
specific about I'm choosing to learn from this person.
Yeah. And I think it's important for people that are in relationship with people that have faced complex trauma. You mentioned there, like you had to open yourself up. As much as you might want to help somebody else, if they don't open themselves up, you're going to probably get frustrated trying to change them, right?
Yeah,
Talk to us about that.
there have been seasons where people have tried to get me to feel things deeply, and I wasn't there. I wasn't able to feel things, period. Then, but also I
Hmm.
wasn't. I could not show up in that space, and so um, just because it is part of someone's healing journey that they will go through that one thing doesn't mean today's the day. So just walk with them and let them show up in their timing and gently guide them. But if it's all one day at a time. You can't go from 100 to 0. Growth happens one day at a time. Healing happens one day at a time. You can't just wake up and say, today's the day I'm going to be healthy. And it just happens. It doesn't happen that way. So you have to slowly train yourself over time to show up differently. Um, and that is slow, unsexy work, but it has to be done. So as there have been seasons in my life where I have, not been as integrated as I am today, and I have shown up for people in their trauma and wanted to say, this is what you need to do next, or this is what, like, let me move your life around and rearrange you. um and I've tried to do things for them, but really it is like you've got to want it yourself. um and they may not want it themselves yet, but if you continuously show up with kindness, showing them that one day they can show up for themselves like that, then one day they'll be able to go through it. But today may not be that day. And that's okay, because it takes a long time to undo damage, especially relational damage.
Yeah, and there's probably a lot of cues that you're looking at to see if it's safe that are probably so subconscious and trained that even little things can make you can kind of just see how someone acts or
Oh,
behaves
yeah.
or responds
There's
to
so
certain
much that
things.
was so ingrained in my subconscious that I had no idea of. Um, I mean, for 28 years, I was having panic attacks and had no idea. I was having like choking panic attacks and had no idea. And those were ways that my body was responding on my behalf. I didn't have to tell it to panic, it just did it. In fact,
Yeah.
I thought I was pretty calm in that moment because I was so dissociated that I was calm, but my
Yeah.
body told the truth as it normally does. So,
Yeah.
yes.
Have you heard of the show Severance? It plays with that disassociation idea of the innies and the outies, and they don't know the other. Speaking of stories, like what are some stories and narratives that has shaped like who you've become and who you are now and that inspire you?
Um, I I definitely gravitate towards like real stories, like I said. So I read a lot of memoirs because it gives me language for what I've been through, but also in an odd way makes me feel like I'm not alone, like I have community. Um,
Mhm.
even though those people don't know that I exist, I'm grateful that they exist and that I can look up to
Yeah, yeah.
them. Um, so that has been really helpful for me is reading memoirs, and it doesn't have to be about trauma or anything, but just anything to give language. Um, like I really enjoy learning about systems and culture too. So reading books like The Color of Compromise or Caste with an E by Isabella Wilkerson. Books like that allow me to absorb everything that has been going on for generations and then allow me to make sense of it because that's what I was designed to do. That's what I feel so natural in is taking in a bunch of information and then making it make sense. So I
Yeah.
gravitate towards real stuff, but I do love an occasional murder mystery. Um, but I also have had to take a break from some content because so 2 years ago, my uncle was murdered. He was beaten to death.
Oh, wow.
And so that has opened up all kinds of things and content became um very limited. I had to filter out a lot of content very quickly because anything with violence um, or blood, um, sometimes it's not. Sometimes it's not even a like blood. It's just a red color. Sometimes can trigger me because it just puts me right back in the day that I found out and how I imagined my uncle dying. So it is, um, so content is constantly being shaped based on how my complex PTSD is showing up in that season. and, and that just is what it is. And I am embracing it. And now
Yeah.
I carry things with me everywhere because I just expect to be triggered wherever I go. And and I just live my life that way and I am becoming a ninja around triggers and it's and it's been cool how many resources have come out, especially since COVID. I think more people are becoming more aware
Mm,
of neurodiversity, people whose nervous systems are wired differently than the neurotypical people. And so things like cute earplugs are coming out so that a loud noise doesn't have to trigger me. I can have these cute earplugs that now match my whole outfit and and I don't have to look like a dork.
Now, my experience with you is we joke a lot. So talk to me about humor. Like, how has humor
Yeah.
played a role in this whole journey?
So
Or has it?
my life has been so serious and I think enough about the serious because I was stuck in survival mode for so long that joking and humor is how I live. Like the
Yeah.
other way it's how I survive, but joking and humor is how I live.
Yeah.
My husband, one of his top 5 values is fun. And we literally like that is all we do
Okay.
in this house is we giggle together and we have fun and we do silly things and we um because life is too serious and um and I mean, even some of the silliest time, like I have been completely paralyzed and we are just giggling together. Like, I'll tell one story. So we have a king size bed and there was a time that I was paralyzed and I got stuck in the middle of the bed. And Alan was like, well, that's where you live now. I'll see you later. And he left the room, and we just start giggling, and I'm like, no, I can't get out on my own. And and eventually, he rolled me out of the bed because I couldn't get out on my own. But we just
Yeah.
giggled about it because, what else are you gonna do? Like, I can't brush my teeth today, but I
Yeah.
mean, we're gonna find a way to laugh about it because it's it's too serious to not laugh.
Yeah. Yeah. I don't tell me if you've ever had this experience. So I think I was 19, 18 or 19. I got in a car accident and totaled my car. And thankfully me and the passengers were all fine. But it had an effect on me mentally, but I didn't like process it. And so like sometime in the next few days, I was with my wife now. So we were just dating at the time. I put something in the microwave to cook it, and it was a plastic bowl and it wasn't made for the microwave, so it just melted. And I started laughing, and I could not stop. I started laughing for an hour. I could not stop laughing for an entire hour. It was like I was stuck in this mode because of this event, and then it like permified it. Have you ever
So
had
many
anything like that
things.
happen?
I mean, that is kind of what led me to doing that mentor program where I was replacing lies with truth, because I was noticing that some of the behaviors and emotion that were coming out of me didn't really make sense. And the more I looked at it, I started saying, okay, well, if that
Oh,
doesn't make sense, then there must be something underneath the surface. And so I started going one layer deeper and saying,
yeah.
okay, well,
Mhm.
you know, um, like one time Alan and I fought over trash, the trash can. And it wasn't like taking it out or something. It
Yeah.
was that the trash was filling up too quickly. Like, it's trash. We're just gonna take it out when it's full. But for whatever reason, well, we were both, not for whatever reason. I know exactly the reason. We were both under a little bit of stress at the time. I think my sister was living with us temporarily. And so there was more trash going in the trash can. But for whatever reason, it just, we were kind of stressed out. And that was the thing that put us over the edge. But on paper,
Mm.
what it showed up at the time is the trash is full. I'm so angry. And I'm like, why am I angry about it? Why are we fighting about trash right now? It is the silliest thing. And first of all, once we realized that, we just started giggling because we're like, what are we fighting about? And then we realized, oh, there is something deeper underneath the surface, and that's why it doesn't match up. So in your life, when you see something
Mhm.
like that, a behavior and emotion that comes out at you that doesn't quite match up with the situation, just become curious of it. Just start
Yeah.
taking notice and just say, what am I believing right now? What am I telling myself?
Yeah. Well, it's interesting that you say that because it kind of connected a little dot, and I don't know if they're connected, but I'll say it. So I had an experience probably about 10 years ago, 11 years ago, where I wept, like wept for an hour. And I wonder like if there was a grief, and when I did weep, I felt like that was appropriate. But looking back at the car accident, I mean, there was grief there that I had to process in the situation. And perhaps I didn't know how to grieve, so I laughed,
Yeah. So
you
many of
know?
us are not taught what grief
So,
looks like. And grief looks different for everyone.
yeah.
And like, I've been through a lot of grief in my life. I've lost a lot of people, um, some of which are still living, and I've lost them, and some of which are dead. But I've lost a lot of people, and so I've had to grieve them along the way, but I didn't always grieve them along the way. Sometimes I waited 10 years to actually grieve them.
Yeah.
And sometimes grief will come up in not necessarily like a loss of a person or something like that, but like mourning the loss of something that you should have had. So like mourning the loss of a normal
Yes.
mother-daughter relationship. I'll never have that. I still have a relationship with my biological mother, but but I didn't grow up with her in a mom role. And so she will never play that role in my life. And so I've had to grieve that, even
Yeah.
though she's still alive and well and we still have a relationship. I've had to
Yeah.
let go of what I thought our relationship would look
Mhm.
like, and what I've read about mother-daughter relationships are
Yeah.
like. I have to,
Yeah.
like, separate that because
Yeah.
I will never have that experience. So sometimes grief comes in layers, where it's sometimes I'm grieving a
Mhm.
person, sometimes I'm grieving something that I've been through, something that I should have gone through, or something that I should have had but didn't.
Yeah. Yeah, that's interesting because I have this hypothesis that a lot of our societal issues is a lot of unresolved grief and a lot of not accepting the things that would make us feel that grief. And so we're perpetuating trauma upon each other, which is going to require more
Yes.
grief to deal with.
Yeah. I similarly, I have a theory that a lot of the chronic pain that is happening in the United States, at least, is relational pain, and it is emotional pain that people are storing in their bodies. And it is probably because they are still connected to the people that hurt them, and their bodies are screaming, "Get me out of here."
And I think there are dynamic going back to the dynamics, like in the acceptance, like I think the acceptance piece is so important because to accept what you're describing is to acknowledge that there's a something wrong. And for me to acknowledge that, like if I've been denying it for so long, like I there's a pride element there too. At like, oh, I've been wrong for the last 10 years. I'd rather not feel
Yeah,
that.
totally. But if that thing is true, it's always going to be true. So wouldn't you rather switch today
Yep.
than switch in 10 years? Like, you're eventually going to
Yeah.
have to switch your way of thinking.
Yeah.
So it's like, choose your hard. Do you do you do it now, which
Do
will
it.
be hard?
Yeah.
Do you wait 10 years before you actually start approaching yourself with kindness and curiosity and diving deeper into your story and how you were
Mhm.
molded into who you show up as today?
Yeah. And I actually think in a lot of ways it's probably going to be our generation and younger because I just don't see a lot of movement in the older generations in that regard. And for me, it's like, well, something's wrong, but I'm not as attached, I guess. I don't know. But it's like, okay, like even, I'll use the church as an example. There's a lot of things wrong in the church. And like seeing that and recognizing it and leaning into it and accepting it, for me, it's like, okay, that's fine. But for some people, it's like, well, then there's something about it that they can't do that same thing. I don't know. What do you think?
I think that millennials, and Gen Z and Gen Alpha, we are all trained from an early age to constantly be evolving. The generations that came before us, because they did not have the internet, are not trained that way. And so for them to constantly be growing and evolving and taking in new information, that's not their natural state. But for me,
It's
I
hard.
grew up
Yeah.
while the internet was coming up and while social media was coming up, and so I'm constantly taking in information. If I have a question, I immediately know an answer. Whereas someone who is maybe 20 years older than me, they grew up in a world where if they had a question, they may just have to have that question for the rest of their lives. And
Oh
so they're
yeah.
not trained to be constantly evolving and taking in new information and constantly updating how they show up in the world. So so in a lot of ways, I have a lot of
Yeah.
em- empathy and sympathy for Gen X and older, because they were not trained to be constantly evolving like we were. And so they have it harder in some ways. And in so many ways, we are kind of against them because they are the ones that are stuck in their ways and not evolving. And so that frustrates us who are evolving. Um, but I think more recently, I've come to understand that they are the product of their environment, and they all were taught that at 18, when you're done with school, you stop learning. And unless unless they have a natural bent towards learning or enjoy that, they kind of don't gravitate towards it. And you kind of can't blame them for it.
Yeah, and if their way of life worked for them, that's also it's kind of like your
Yeah.
survival mode. Like it worked for you for a while, and it had consequences that had to be dealt with. That kind of surfaced maybe the blind spots, and maybe that's a big part of it. Is just so there's a lot of blind spots and unseen consequences upon others, which our way of life causes to others, and if we are blind to them,
Yeah.
we're not
So
seeing the
that's something too
consequence,
that
right?
that really shaped me. So in college, I heard this sermon series called Climate Change, and it was done by Jeff Henderson, and it was about um, how the way you show up in a room has a certain climate, regardless of if you're aware of it. So he presented this question: what's
Mm,
it like to be on the other side of me? And that changed everything for me because I started thinking, okay, just because I don't name it doesn't mean that everyone in the room doesn't feel it. So I might as well name it and claim it and let's do better, you know? In that season of my life, I reached out to two different people in every single group I was in at my work. I was leading a guest services team at the church. I asked two people on my team and two people who were leading me. I asked friends. I asked people who were in my small group. Like, I really wanted a clear picture of how do I show up in a room and what is your experience of me? Because it doesn't change regardless of if I know it or not. Um, so so I might as well be aware of it. And so I started that
yeah,
process like 15
yeah,
years ago. And so I that's part of me building the life that I want and building the reputation that I want and being the person that I want to be. Um, is having a clearer view of myself and not just ignoring the blind spots because they're gonna shape the room
yeah.
regardless of if I'm aware of them.
Yeah, I think that's super helpful, especially when we talk about some of the things we talked about earlier in terms of power dynamics and cultures, because when you're on the bottom of the pyramid of power, if you're the vulnerable, you experience that climate, that environment in a very different way than the people at the top, and and that can create weird
Yeah, for
weird
sure.
behaviors and responses. Yeah. So we've covered a lot here. What have we missed? What's left
Yeah.
to wrap up
The only
these
thing
threads
I want
here?
to mention is that I am working on a memoir project. So, as part of my own healing, I wanted to kind of um, get some of my memories out of my head and onto paper, and it has just kind of flowed out of me. So I am currently working on that, and unsure what's next after that or where it will be published or if it will be published, but it has been a great exercise for me to just process some of these really vivid episodes that I've had of paralysis to kind of piece together how did it get to that point. And so there's
Hmm.
chapters like that that are really experiential and drop the reader right into that experience with me, alongside me. And then there are chapters where I'm making sense of all that I've been through, and the systems that have shaped me, um, and the narratives that have shaped me. So it's been a really fun project, fun, but also hard. But it has been so great.
Yeah, yeah.
But
Well, yeah,
I have
yeah.
written
How far along
30
are you?
chapters. And so
Wow.
I am kind of in the phase of like just uh like finalizing it, making sure that all the narratives make sense and that it's accurate.
So
I'm
you're
pretty
almost
close, I
done.
think.
You're almost done.
At least as far as I can get it on my own. So
Do you feel? How do you feel?
I feel great. It has been, I have known for probably about 12 years now. I have known that my story would one day come out, that I would one day tell it, and that um and I have sat down at different times in my life to write and to I've like kept lots of notes, and there have been deep seasons of growth where I've just documented things profusely. Like there's been a compulsion to document those at the time, but there's never been a time until now that I've sat down to write and been like, oh, it's time to write. Any other time that I've sat down to kind of piece it together, it's kind of been like, nah, not now. There have been no words that come. It's like, nope, we're not ready. But this time when I sat down to write, it was like, oh girl, we are ready. Let's go. And so it has just been flowing out of me, and it has been so fun. And I really just want to model what it looks like to approach your story with grace and kindness and curiosity, and to just start to piece together what your body and mind and feelings have probably been telling you for a long time.
That's exciting, and I guess it's who knows? Is it exciting to not know where it's going, or does that give you
I
anxiety?
I think if this was a vision that was just mine, I think it would give me anxiety. But because I have known that this is deeper than just my story that is being told through this memoir, it doesn't carry weight. It feels light. Like I'm just gonna see where
Yeah,
it goes.
that's awesome. Let's talk to the person that's like, okay, I want to move along this journey like Leslie has done. What's the starting point? What's the next step? Where can they go until your book is out?
So one of the books that has really helped me and given me a lot of language, and just affirmed all the things that I've learned in the last 2 years, has is this book, Make Sense of Your Story by Adam Young. He is a therapist, I believe. He also has a podcast, but he really just walks you through how to approach your story with kindness and curiosity, and kind of helps you to piece together how the things that you've been through have potentially shaped you. And so I would definitely recommend that one. It is done through the latest thinking about neuroscience, clinical psychology, theology. It is just really well done. So, highly recommend that. Also, if you're curious about the God that I believe in, because he doesn't sound like the God that you believe in, I would recommend reading The Path. What if the way of Jesus was different than you thought? My the ministry I work for, True Faith, just released this earlier this year, and it is such a visual way to experience the gospel in a way that is actually sounds like good news, which is what the gospel. That's what gospel means, is good news, and so much of in my experience, so much of what the American church is offering doesn't sound like good news. So to me, that is a natural indicator that that's not the real gospel. And so I would definitely recommend this book. It is so well done, and it is not boring. It is experiential. It is told through an allegory of the story of Tal, who is a young architect, and but it also has every chapter has guide notes, which reads like you're talking to a mentor, someone who's a little bit further along than you in their faith, and can help you to unpack your own faith and unpack your purpose. So those are two really great things that I would say until my memoir comes out, if it ever does. Um, that would be a great place to start approaching your story with curiosity and kindness.
Yeah. What's something they could do in a relational or communal as a step? So, like, that would be something they could do on their own, but what type of thing could they be looking for to kind of get involved in at their church or their community, or what could help them?
Yeah, I would say look for safe people. Look for people who you can start to come out of the shadows with, and share the last 10% of what's going on with you. Um, Look for people who are not just going to um, tell you to buck up and pull up your bootstraps, but look for people who are actually going to see you and soothe you, because it I think I said this before, you can only be loved to the degree that you are known. And so once you can start to show up in these relationships being fully known, then you can start to soothe some of the parts in you that were unloved. So start creating that safety in whether it's with friendships, if you have someone in your life that you think could be that safe person, start taking small steps and kind of testing the relationship a little bit and see if it's safe. And if it is, then let that person know you. Um, at TrueFace, we say that love is the process of meeting needs for one another. But if you don't say that you have needs, which we all do, then you don't let anyone meet your needs. And so I have had to learn that I am needy. And even though I am super independent, I am still needy. And so there are ways that I allow Alan to meet those needs and allow friends in my life to meet those needs. But if I don't ever speak up, they can't meet them. And so just start coming out of the shadows, start finding the people who can create that safety so that you can start to heal some of your deepest wounds, because you don't have to keep opening them up. You don't have to carry them around forever. They can heal.
Yeah, that's awesome. Well, Leslie, thank you so much for sharing your life and your story with us today. This has been an episode of the Share Life podcast, and we'll see you on the next one.
Thanks, Jason.